Tonight on Gangs of Oz, the secret and savage world of the Italian Mafia. How the honoured society infiltrates and corrupts our political systems.
I'm innocent today.
Sorry?
What happened when an Aussie businessman played the mob at their own game?
And the choices were $1 million in cash. Under offer was a bullet.
And the local operation that brought down a $2 billion international drug ring.
It's nearly as big as a Volkswagen.
A young man of Italian background is being initiated into a secretive and deadly criminal organisation. He's about to become a made man, one of a select few who swear allegiance to Australia's version of the Mafia.
I swear, with this blade of a mortar, with its point bathed in blood, in front of the organisation and honoured society...
The group originated in the south of Italy, in an area known as Calabria. Now their members are scattered all over the world.
Calabrian Mafia initiation rites in Australia are a fact. They're a fact of life. We've got evidence going back to the 1930s that they were practiced, and that evidence continues through until the 1990s at least. The rituals appear to follow a similar pattern, which involve the blessing of the place where the ritual is to be carried out. That involves the cutting of the fingers, the burning of the angel, and the undertaking of a number of vows which in breach result in pain of death.
I swear.
The Mafia not only exists in this country, but has been allowed to thrive because of its many and influential friends.
We're talking about public servants in passport offices, we're talking about the immigration department, we're talking about magistrates, judges, politicians, police, the media. So they've very well practiced at the art of placing people in those positions, and that one day the favour will be called back in.
One of the fortes of Mafia society activities in Australia has always been political influence.
One of its most crucial placements was Labor Party politician Al Grasby, a minister in the Whitlam government in the 1970s.
For more than 3 decades from the 1960s, Al Grasby was a front man for the Calabrian Mafia. Grasby's role was to deny the existence and to make the public believe the Calabrian Mafia did not exist in Australia.
I'm innocent today.
That position became hard to defend after the murder of Griffith anti-drugs campaigner Donald Mackay in 1977. The Woodward Royal Commission found that the Mafia had ordered Mackay's execution to protect its marijuana business.
A large part of that the investigations undertaken by the Commission were into the Mackay murder and also into the drug operations of a number of prominent figures in Griffith, including Tony Sergi of the winery, Pat Sergi of Fairfield, and Aussie Bob Trimboli. What the Mackay murder subsequently revealed, as a result of the Woodward Royal Commission, was that there was a secret Calabrian society.
And of course I will appeal.
But Grasby wouldn't give in. In a shameful manoeuvre, he claimed that Trimboli had nothing to do with Mackay's death and tried to point the finger at Mackay's widow, Barbara.
Mr Mackay's widow, Barbara, and her son, Paul, were involved in the 1977 murder.
By far the worst thing he did was accept $40,000 from Trimboli to circulate a scurrilous document which suggested that Barbara Mackay was responsible for the death of her husband and not the Calabrian Mafia.
Greatest thing that I have...
Every chance Al Grasby had, he was trying to tell people there is no Mafia.
But Al Grasby could only do so much. Australia's attention was focused squarely on Griffith and its Italian community. The Mafia could no longer afford to conduct its cannabis operations locally. It was forced to seek out new and more distant pastures.
the drug trade on the east coast of Australia was still heavily influenced by the Italian drug syndicates. They moved their locations, they adopted even more secrecy than what they had previously insisted on.
One of their lackeys was a man by the name of Nunzio Greco, also known as Norm. He was identified by the Woodward Royal Commission as the builder of Griffith's Mafia mansions, the so-called grass castles.
Greco was involved in the drug trade and had in fact a conviction for being involved in the marijuana industry, had served some time in jail. However, he maintained his links to the syndicates from syndicate members from Griffith and became heavily involved in the syndicate's drug trade on the east coast of Australia.
Greco's final job was as foreman on a marijuana plantation in northern Queensland. The far north was one area the Mafia had begun cultivating now that Griffith was off limits. Unfortunately for Norm, his boss Bruno Morabito thought he was ripping off the crop. Norm's wife Anne clearly remembers what happened.
So Norm received a phone call. And he was speaking to someone in Italian. He got off the phone, he told me he had to leave for a couple of days. He asked me to pack his... That's right, he asked me to pack his suit. And I said, what are you impressing people nowadays? He said, I have to meet someone. And by the time he showered and he got a few things organised, the phone rang again. He picked it up, and within a couple of minutes there was the lights from the car.
The difficulty obviously lay in the fact that he was closely affiliated with organised crime, Italian organised crime, and murder. And those murder inquiries, those murder investigations aren't simple to do.
It would have been the perfect crime, except the young girl's boyfriend told a friend what had happened. Eventually, this incredible tale of adultery and murderous passion reached the police.
I mean, families are always a consideration in any murder inquiry, but with Morabito's reputation as a hitman and enforcer, it was one of the least viable propositions at that stage.
Maria was sent to prison for 13 years. Her lover Manny Duke received a 16-year sentence. The teenage girl was given a 3-year good behaviour bond. Her boyfriend was found not guilty.
It was just amazing that they actually had the maliciousness and intent to coldly go through and work out how to kill this bloke, regardless of what he's done.
Still to come on Gangs of Oz. What happens when an honest businessman takes on the Mafia?
The intention was to kill him, blast with a shotgun straight at your body. Yeah, and that would only be a matter of a foot away.
Selling fruit and veggies should never be this dangerous. The tentacles of the Calabrian Mafia, or the Honoured Society, have been spreading here for 80 years. But it wasn't until the 1960s that Australians got their first real glimpse of its handiwork. That's when a series of execution-style killings rocked Melbourne. Mafia kingpin Vincenzo Moratore was one of the first victims. Shot dead one morning as he left for his job at the Melbourne fruit and vegetable markets. He had been trying to gain control of the market's lucrative extortion racket, where every farmer paid the Mafia for the simple privilege of selling their produce. Whoever controlled that tax pocketed millions. Almost 3 decades later, Vincenzo's son, Alphonse Moratore, tried to muscle in on the same scam.
He probably fitted the stereotype of the Italian-Australian male whose family had some history and were notorious in the past, and to some degree he tried to live on that prior family reputation.
In 1992, Alphonse Moratore gave new meaning to the old saying, like father, like son. 28 years after his dad was murdered, Alphonse and another man left home for the markets. Gotcha. A gunman was waiting for them. Alphonse Moratore died instantly. The other man was shot in the leg.
The shots rang out around 1:45 this morning. 39-year-old Alfonso Moratore...
And just like in his father's case, the killer was never found. Every retailer, from the local grocer to the big supermarket chains, was being forced to buy their produce from the farmers who'd paid the Mafia's 50-cent a case tax. The extra charge was built into the price. In the case of Coles, the racket was costing $5 million a year.
These guys were methodically, regularly, every day of the week, robbing people. It was 50 cents a case, and there were many, many thousands of boxes of fresh fruit and vegetables as part of this racket. Now, that is organised, it's calculated, it's consistent, it's regular, and it's cheating.
Nowadays, Frank Costa is one of Australia's most successful businessmen and chairman of the Geelong Football Club. But 20 years back, when the Mafia ruled the Victorian markets, he operated a relatively small regional fruit and vegetable supply company. Frank and his brother Anthony were hard-working, ambitious, and on their way up. Coles saw a way of breaking the Mafia's stranglehold at the markets. If anyone could upset the apple cart, it was the Costa boys.
They asked me, would I be prepared to take over their distribution centre and help them to stamp out the nonsense that was going on. We were to come in and take over the full distribution, which was a distribution centre Coles had out of Sunshine, and they asked us would we take over 30% of the buying so that we could perhaps help start to break the whole crooked chain.
Anthony Costa worked out of the markets. Frank ran the business from his office in Geelong.
I'm used to having to be competitive. I'm used to having to earn your stripes. You have to stand up against these things or you get run over the top of. We got the hard ball. And if you don't get the hard ball, you don't win the game. So we got the hard ball.
The Costas agreed to the Coles proposal. It was always going to be a gamble. They just didn't realise how big a gamble until a few months later, when their distribution centre was the target of an arson attack.
And they had long fuses put underneath the forklifts, the trucks, and right through under the office, and particularly under the computer area. The place went up in flames, burnt the jolly joint pretty badly. However, we were able to get ourselves going again by Monday morning and sort of cleaned it out. But the biggest damage really was to the mental condition of our people, because that was really scary. We'd never copped anything like that ever before. Now, that was an attempt to give us a warning. Just stay out of it. Don't you touch this job you've been offered by Coles.
Costa's people were dealing with frequent death threats. But the company refused to be intimidated. So the Mafia looked further up the food chain. They decided to target Coles itself.
During that week, when the distribution centre manager came to work, he pulled up in their car park, got out of his car, and somebody called out his name, and there were two men there with baseball bats and belted the living daylights out of the poor fellow. But him in a real bad way, so he was carted off. Coles were very upset by that, naturally. So there was a warning went to Coles and a warning went to Costas, right?
The fire and the assault happened before the Costas had even set up their Melbourne distribution centre. The pressure intensified when they started their operations.
The first two incidents happened before